Hello everyone and welcome back. My name is XFerginatorX and today we're covering another Halo Controversies video today. Today we're covering Clamber. You've probably already seen this video around about two people, two famous YouTubers that are also arguing about this. This is how controversial the subject is. When I did my sprint video, this is probably the second most controversial Halo 5 armor ability thing, whatever you want to call it, Spartan ability, that is very controversial amongst the community. That it's so controversial that you had two YouTubers just going at it back and forth arguing over this thing. You had Favyn and Aozolai, I think that's the name is, or Aozolai. I pronounced his name wrong so many times, I'm sorry. If I try to say it, I keep saying Aozolai. I think it's Aozolai. But yeah, watch too much Game of Thrones. Anyways, you watch these two argue back and forth, and you have Aozolai who argues that it makes the gameplay faster and gets people back in the action quicker. But then you have people like Favyn that argue against it and say that it rewards lower skill players and handicaps them. And the fact is, they're both right to a degree, but in other areas they're not so accurate. So in this controversies video, I'm going to say that where the arguments are valid and what might be a better way to go about it and where they're possibly not valid. And so I guess I'm going to be this kind of third person in a three-way war, I guess, because I'm not going to be 100% for or against it. I like to take a look at things and not necessarily always be like, oh, let's keep it or remove it. I like to find ways to improve some things, because if you just try to take things away, it's not always going to work. And what I have found when it comes down to this is that unless like a good 90% or more of the community is 100% in agreement, that's not going to happen. Never ever is anything going to change. It's not just Halo. Any game that I see nowadays, if you don't have 100%, not 100%, but you have at least like 90% or more dedication of people that agree with it, something, otherwise you will never see them ever change it. If it's a 50-50 split, they will never change it. It's just the last time I've ever seen anything change that wasn't 100% agreed upon was Bloom back in Halo Reach. That was the only time it was like, it ruins the gameplay, and then other people would go, dude, it's just a visual indicator of spread. And so it was this long discussion, and it was still 50-50, but they ended up doing a title update, and they ended up just splitting the community into two different playlists. And yeah, that was absolutely fun to deal with, having two different playlists and the community dropping pretty much in population and being split and making match times longer. It was pretty fun. But yeah, that's the point. Unless you're 100% in agreement, they're never going to simply keep or remove something. And I'm going to do the same thing though. Like, I'm going to look at it not from necessarily a popularity point of view, even though that will play some factors in it, but I'm going to try and look at where we can at least try to improve upon things rather than just simply throw it away or keep it. But I just want to throw that out there. That's probably one of the reasons why, even though Favyn may have some really valid arguments, they probably are not going to remove it. So I'm going to try and look at a way that we could try and improve it rather than have to necessarily remove or keep it as is. Sometimes it comes down to just decisions of what I see is fair, and if it's outright to remove it or outright keep it, that's because it's clearly it has no grounds for it to be there, or it needs to be there because it actually promotes some valuable points. Just like in my sprint video, I actually did not say I was for or against removing it, even though I gave the community their vote. I gave my point of where I stood on it, and that there was a good alternative, and that is momentum-based movement, where it's basically like sprint, but not sprint at the same time. It doesn't do the animation of sprint, but at the same time, it actually is like sprint in the way that you will move around the map faster, but with some alternatives. And so instead, it actually feels like an improved Halo 3 style of playing, but with but still have that sprint feel to it, that you're traversing the map quicker, but doesn't have the Halo 4, Halo Reach, Halo 5, but you can actually feel it, that you're moving quicker around the map, and in terms of how it works and all that fun stuff. And you should really watch that video, because apparently a lot of, even though it's such a heavy discussion, it's probably the most controversial subject. I think I managed to find a way that people can agree upon something that gets rid of all the negatives for and against sprint, and finds a way to find a common ground, a common place to have peace, and even like some sort of like balance without people just going at each other's throats, being all elitist, and incorporating some things like stopping power, and fixes a lot of the gripes that people had with the ability to just sprint around the map and just run away from your target, or run away from being attacked, and actually just took on both arguments of both sides, took their pros and cons, and found a common ground. Well, just like sprint, Clamber is the second most controversial Spartan ability in Halo 5 that gets brought up, and time to time I hear both sides arguing this, and so I want to try and see where we can go on this. So let's start off with Favyn and the side of getting rid of Clamber and what the problems are with Clamber, which I do agree more on with Favyn, with a lot of the things about why the Clamber mechanic is broken. They are right on things like Clamber allows players to get to ridiculous high areas that you can just crouch jump, which is a huge problem. Being able to just jump out to these really high areas that are way too forgiving as well. So you can jump super high on the map, and you can also jump and clamber out of a hard situation real easily with little effort. With these Spartan abilities, they allow you to get really high points on the map and get out. I think there's a Henley Gaming that did a video where they, back in when Halo 5 first came out, where they grabbed the flag of the enemy team and just ran to the outside of the map, and found a way to get out, and made it so that the enemy team could never actually find them. And yeah, it just showed how broken that was, and that's some of the problems that need to be addressed with Clamber. That the fact that it allows you to get way too easily out of the maps, and that's a big problem with the gameplay. The Halo 5 completely, when it introduced this mechanic, made it so heavily focused on clambering that it really pressured you to use it, that you never really saw a reason to use crouch jumping when Clamber was always there to forgive you. And then when I was playing Halo Reach, I found out how much I was depending upon Clamber, because I kept thinking, oh, I just clamber the jump, and realized that on Ivory Tower it gets that middle spot area that you need to time your jumps, and that Clamber did not help at all, and I constantly messed up. But at the same time, you have to understand that combat, the way Halo combat evolves over time, it can't be the same exact thing over and over. But again, Clamber feels like it was pressured upon us, that we had to just like use it, because there was a lot of situations where you did not have an opportunity to use crouch jumping so many times that it just felt like it was unnecessary to even bother with learning to crouch jump, because Clamber would just always be there to get you out of the situation. And the fighting animations, or the animations that took you out of the fight, were really dumb too. Like, oh, I could just jump in Clamber and I'm out, and it was so stupid that you could just clamber your way out, and the fact that you could not shoot while in Clamber, but yet you're forced to have to use it in some situations. So basically, it felt like it was handicapping you intentionally, and not handicapping you because you played bad. Sometimes you actually had to just use it because in order to get to some place quicker, you had to do that. So he's absolutely right that it does handicap you, allows you to get out of the maps easier, and you feel pressured to use it more often. And also go off on a tangent here. I really hate this whole animation stuff, this whole thing that they've added in Halo 5. I think it's ridiculous that when you pick up a power-up, you have to do an animation. I remember I could just pick up a power-up as I ran by. I just grabbed it, and that was it, and I didn't have to physically grab it. It just, the second I touched it, it activated. That's how I feel that it should be, that the second you touch it, you just go. Not this whole, oh, I gotta do an animation now in half a second, wasted. You have to use a trick button combo if you want to completely cancel it and just instantly apply it to you. I think that's ridiculous that you have to do that now in order to just be able to use an ability. Anyways, to get back on point here, there are problems with Clamber that need to be addressed, especially those ridiculously high jump areas that you can just get out of the map for no reason at all that it should even be allowed. It should literally be that I'll go into that a little bit later. Let me just get on to Aozolai's part here, and then we'll discuss that. Aozolai says that, you know, there's a way for Clamber to coexist.
I know there is much we can learn from each other if we can negotiate a truce. We can find a way to coexist. Can there be a peace between us?
No peace.
What is it you want us to do?
And which I do agree there might be a way that they can coexist, and he tries to demonstrate, which, by the way, I'm not going to say that he's trying to intentionally be deceitful or anything like that. I'm not going to go down that drama route. I don't think he was trying to. I just don't think he plays the same competitive level as some other people, and that's why he doesn't, you know, he didn't know about certain jumps that you can actually jump here and it actually might work. But yeah, I'm just gonna not go that route. Anyways, he does demonstrate areas where you know, he can that you can both crouch jump and clamber. The problem is that there's areas where you're forced to have to clamber, and that's the kind of thing that I don't like, is that whole thing that you are pressured to do that. But he tries to demonstrate that they can find ways of coexisting, and that clamber does benefit versus crouch jumping benefits, and clamber does not. And multiple times in his example, also he states, you know, that clamber gets you around the map quicker, which is true, to get you back in the fight faster, which is what the casual players kind of like, and also the super sweaty competitives that like Halo 5 also like that too. They like to be able to quickly get back in the action. In fact, there are jumps that both YouTubers even bothered to mention, and that, in my opinion, give way too much of an advantage of traversing the map faster by using clamber rather than crouch jumping. One of those is Coliseum. I think that's the name of it. Sorry if I mispronounced that. I mean, I think there's like 2 maps that have the name Coliseum, but yeah, I don't know. Thanks to Proximity's video that he showed, he shows that you can get around the map super easily with going from one person's side to the other person's side, getting their flag all by yourself without ever having to drop the flag. You can get around the map instantly and score it fast, which is just ridiculous how quick you can do that. And it's thanks to Clamber as part of that, of why you can traverse the map way too fast. And that's the problem that needs to get addressed. On top of that, there's a spot that Favyn and Aozolai showed in their videos that they didn't necessarily fully go in depth about, where just simply that clamber ability got you even faster across the map that they didn't show, because I think they were just showing just clamber in itself. But with, you know, the thrusting and everything, that clamber would help you that crouch jumping wouldn't, was going from like the sniper spawn to the top mid. You can just, you know, sprint, thrust, and clamber, which you can't do with crouch jumping. That wouldn't be something you'd be able to do. But you can just as easily just, you know, again, do the jump, thrust, clamber, and you're getting across the map way faster than if you tried to, you know, crouch jump and get around the sides. Clamber does noticeably make more players get back into the combat engagement quicker, but now it feels like Clamber is taking priority with less skill involved. Not to mention, the biggest issue against Favyn's video is that even though he puts up really good valid arguments, at the end of the day, like I stated before, that poll results, like the ones I held, show that most people are still in favor of Clamber. And unfortunately, a lot of times what I find is really funny is unless you can somehow visually show this and convey it to people a lot easier, a lot of people will say stuff like, when it came to sprint, one of the funniest things I ever saw was like, hey, if you don't like sprint, just don't sprint. I mean, what's so hard about that? Unfortunately, some people, they don't understand the whole technical strategy, skill stuff, the competitive side of it. They don't understand that. So unless they actually see it, they don't understand why. And that's why even when I held my poll on a unbiased area to try and see where people stood on it, the majority that play the game don't usually get that competitive into it, and so they don't understand where the differences are, why sprint is disliked, why Clamber is disliked. And the problem is that, fortunately, unless you have a drastic change in people's opinions and not just like a 60-40, if you don't have a perfect like 90% or more, usually that never happens. Again, the only time I ever saw that happen was with the Bloom debate back in the days of Halo Reach, where not everyone was for it, but there were still people that were in favor of it, but yet they still tried to split the playlist, and that was, yeah, with the title updates. So it's pretty interesting. That's why I don't think that it'll stay, or that Clamber, that it will stay and that they won't be removing it. I've learned that they just won't make changes unless there's a drastic everyone agrees kind of situation, or at least a vast majority agree. If they do change it, that would be quite a big surprise. Unfortunately, people are, dependent on certain features that exist. Sprint's been in a while in the series, and if it just drastically just disappeared one day, people would be like, what the hell? And so the same thing with Clamber. People go, wait, why can't I Clamber anymore? You tell these people that are casual players that the game is built to be even more competitive again. Even though that may sound great, some of the casuals may not agree with it, and even some of the Halo 5 competitive players may not like that. So it's really hard to do that, which is why, again, I'm going to find an alternative method that actually might be something that can work with both situations. But, even if it's a great idea, again, unless you have the whole 90%, it's just not going to go away. That's something Aozolai, I think, mentioned that he's pretty accurate on. Unless you get that full, good majority, it's just not going to change. Unfortunately, some people are attracted by these like-minded ideas and just don't want to see things change. They just want to see it evolve, and they don't understand. They don't really care how it affects the gameplay. Unfortunately. Just like when I did my stream on the Halo MCC on PC announcement, when I was watching that, later in the discussion, I talked about how someone I kind of know who worked on both Halo MCC and on Halo Infinite actually kind of indirectly told me beforehand about this without directly telling me it. But I kept asking, like, hey, when is Halo Reach going to come to MCC? And he goes, you just gotta wait and see. And did that for about a year. It was pretty annoying, and it's like, because he wouldn't tell me a positive answer, yes or no, and with Reach and PC, and I always kept bugging him about it, and he just would not tell me it. He would just kept his lips shut, but he always kept teasing me about saying, you just gotta wait and see, and he would do that sarcastic way of saying it. But yeah, we got in a discussion, and he didn't necessarily outright say this. This is just me piecing certain things that we had in the discussion, and that Battle Royale was probably going to come to Halo Infinite. It was actually supposed to be part of the E3 2018 announcement, but they literally just dropped it because and put it on the back burner because they were afraid of a bunch of elitist types going ape shit over it and having a bunch of toxic fanboys, going on the forums and go, this is the end, you guys, I'm not gonna buy Halo Infinite. People that literally, they won't even be affected by it. They won't even, because it's a game mode, not a mechanic or anything. They don't have to play it, and they can still have all their other game modes and features and everything, but this one additional added on. Like, nope, I don't care. Like, I literally asked like one guy, like he was getting really defensive about it. He goes, like, I asked him like, why are you so against it? He goes, I hate it. I think it's for Fortnite players. That's if you want to play that, it's totally fine. You just need to go over and play Fortnite. You shouldn't be playing Halo. Like those gatekeeping types. And I told him, like, dude, it doesn't affect you. Why does it matter? He goes, it matters because of the fact that I have principles. I've been an original Halo fan, so therefore the game needs to be designed around the way I see the game. And it was stupid as fuck. Listen to this guy just go off about how the game needs to be designed around him. I'm like, so you're saying if nothing got affected, they still had a perfect gameplay, perfect campaign, everything was amazing about it. You're saying if it has Battle Royale, you're not going to buy the game. Exactly. In fact, I will pirate the game if it comes to PC. It's like, dude, seriously? There's people like that just take this shit way too extreme. And so they ended up dropping it because they knew people were going to go on the page and lose their shit, even though it turned out when they did a vote, it turned out the majority actually were in favor of a Battle Royale mode. It was either people were for it, or at least there were a maybe on it, and they were like open to seeing how Battle Royale might work in Halo Infinite. But it didn't matter. If it's not a good 90%, it's just never going to happen anymore. So unfortunately, sadly, not a lot of things will ever change. Unfortunately, that's how I kind of feel. There's not going to be drastic changes. I don't see. Everyone thinks the game Halo Infinite is going to drastically change all of a sudden just because they have a new art style, but it doesn't mean necessarily the gameplay is going to change, especially when they got a pro team like they did in Halo 5 to test the game, so it's going to be probably the same thing. But anyways, get back to the discussion here, but I'm just trying to make the point here that unfortunately if you don't get that majority there, you're just never going to see a change in the mechanics, especially with Clamber. And so anyways, to get back on point, because there's just so much to discuss about that that I've already gone over, and I'm just not going to go over about Battle Royale and all that stuff. Anyways, so when it comes down to it, I do agree that Favyn is right, that it handicaps the player a lot, but at the same time, the chances of it being removed are just not gonna probably happen. It's just most likely not. It would be a surprise if they do, but with a lot of people having to change the way that they play, that they're used to in Halo 5, and all of a sudden would have to change everything and go, why did we go backwards and whatnot? So now you have, the face these pros and cons that have been mentioned about why even though it helps you traverse the map quicker, and people like that faster movement and so forth, and it helps evolve the gameplay, then you have the other side to say it just handicaps the players, allows them to get out of the map quicker, and it's way too forgiving. And yeah, it's just that both sides, they have their valid arguments. So we need to find a way to find an even ground, because crouch jumping I see is something that does not get rewarded anymore. I feel like it's more rewarding for people to use Clamber than it is to use crouch jumping, because crouch jumping hardly ever you get opportunities to use it. So a noob can easily mess up and get easily forgiven for like some temporary loss in time in an animation, but yet it comes down to hardly anyone using crouch jumping anymore, because Clamber feels like it's being forced upon them. You take that away and you get handicapped real fast, as I explained, like with my Halo Reach gameplay, that I ended up just completely just constantly failing, where otherwise I would be easily being able to get up the map real quickly. So there is drastic change that you see right away. In my opinion, taking in consideration both sides stated here and finding where we can find a silver lining or something to kind of make the gameplay so that it's more favorable to crouch jumping versus Clamber, I see that what we need to do is we need to change a lot of the mechanics, not just Clamber itself. First off, one thing that I'd really like them to change is the player attributes. I don't like the way of how you jump and how you move. The physics in the maps are just ridiculous. I've never liked it since Halo 3. Everything's felt so clunky and so forth, where you just, not just moving and jumping, but turning. Everything's just never felt right since Reach. It just never felt like the way you move around has been the same, just because they've nerfed your character down because you're no longer Spartan 3, or no longer Spartan 2, you're now Spartan 3. But and then Halo 4, same thing. that's why I don't like that necessarily. And when it comes down to also the maps, I feel like they've raised the heights to make you want to have to use the clamber over use the clamber over the crouch jumping. It's always felt, just sluggish and different with the way that Halo's Reach and Halo 4 and Halo 5 mechanics work, and then Halo 5 they just raise the heights for everything. So you got maps that are a lot more stretched out to compensate for sprint and a lot taller to compensate for clamber, and these two factors have greatly affected the maps, and that's why it feels really bad. So if they could go back to a Halo 2, Halo 3 days where the maps were a lot more shrunken down, not like so high up, and that your character could jump and move about the map even just walking, it felt natural, and you could feel like have that free flow fluid movement. That would be great if we could get that kind of feel back. And also with Halo 5, again, with that jumping, they need to really fix that, because I hardly ever find areas where I ever will crouch jump. And it feels like a strain to just have to try and time it right. And even then, it like when Halo 2, Halo 3, when I crouch jump, I could nail that stuff easily. Halo 5, when I crouch jump, your jumping is just so bad that even to crouch jump, it just doesn't feel rewarding at all. You feel like you're always constantly messing up just to use it. That in Halo 2 and Halo 3, even when I went back to it, it did not feel that hard to do. So if I feel like in part it is the movements and the jumping that has been changed as well, not just the clamber itself. So now clamber feels like it's more of a rewarding than so that's why I have to disagree when they say that clamber is risk versus reward. It's basically reward almost entirely, no loss at all. In fact, when Halo 5, when it comes to crouch jumping, I feel like sometimes it's more rewarding to crouch jump than it is to clamber. And there's very, very few opportunities. I mean, I think one time in the entire thing between Favyn and Aozolai that they actually showed one area that crouch jumping was favored and that clamber you couldn't use to your benefit. So that was just a one-time thing that I ever saw, and after that I just never saw it again. And that's something that I feel like it needs to change, that you need to have areas where I feel like that crouch jumping needs to be the favored thing all the time when designing maps. So besides fixing, the jump height, the turning, the walking, the maps, and so forth to feel more like the Halo 3 days and not be so clunky when it comes to how your character moves about and so forth, I feel like they also need to change the way how clamber works. Clamber needs to feel more like a noob ability, and crouch jumping needs to feel more like a pro ability, and no spot should ever on a map, especially when it's in matchmaking multiplayer, should ever have it where clamber has any priority over crouch jumping. Crouch jumping should always be favored to use, and that it should never go in favor of crouch jumping. I'm totally okay with areas where it's crouch jumping only or that it favors crouch jumping, but never should there be a spot where it should be clamber only or that benefits clamber. It should never be that kind of situation where those two options are presented. It should be there, and no like this auto clamber holding down the A button, and then when you get to there it automatically picks you up and whatnot, giving you way too much of an opportunity to press that A button. I feel like they should drastically reduce that down to like a split second, that the second your character is within contact of it, that's when you can press the A button. Otherwise you have too much of an opportunity, too much gap where your character can grab. And then also on top of that, besides just giving way too much time to press the A button, that they need to minimize it down to like a split second, and if you miss, you're done. Also, the distance the distance of the clamber needs to be reduced. That you shouldn't be able to look up and jump 2.5 Spartan heights in order to get to. I think that's ridiculous. They even showed something like that. Like, oh yeah, look at that. You can get to 2.5 height, and that's how pro skill and whatnot you can get up to if you know how to do it right. It's like, that's ridiculous. That's what causes people getting out of maps and so forth. I don't think that should ever be a thing. I think it should be that only if it's at your waist level could you actually be able to jump and clamber up. If you want to do that, you can, but you have to have all those factors, and you have to time it just right perfectly. It's not always in your favor to do clamber versus crouch jumping, and it needs to be at least at waist height, not at, you just angle up and look up. So it should be something where your character level is at, where the waist is, and that's where they can start clambering. It won't give you an opportunity if it's any lower than that. If it's up to your chest, you're not going to get that opportunity. You're going to miss it. And then on top of that, what they should also do is they should add in one other thing that I brought about with sprint, something else that I brought up with sprint. So besides the proximity thing, having to make sure that it has to be right at your waist and it can't just be you look up, I wish they would add in stopping power. That's another thing that was really great. If you do a significant amount of damage, you take out someone's shield or something like that, that you can't get that opportunity because you're taking damage. And then on top of that, if you're even in the process of an animation of getting up and someone does a significant amount of damage, that it actually causes you to fail, that you screw up your clamber in mid animation and then you fall down. It cancels out your animation. That would be also something that would be nice on top of that. And that the only way you can clamber again is when your shields are in the process of recharging, and then if you get damaged again, you fall down again. So that way it basically means that if you're not learning how to clamber properly, or not clamber, crouch jumping, where you could actually make those jumps to get out of the situation, clamber is then less rewarding. That's something I feel like we could do. I feel like, again, there's a way we can keep the core mechanics but add upon it without ruining it. That's how I see it. I don't see that we necessarily have to remove it, because people are gonna not like the drastic change in just removing clamber, but finding a way that change the mechanics so that it exists in a way that it can coexist, but it's not gonna ever have an advantage over the crouch jumping. And also go back to the way we can freely move about a map, and not the way that things are. Like, again, I don't like this whole lore thing added in gameplay. I think that at the core of it, gameplay needs to come first over lore. I don't really care about lore. I really think that's stupid when they added that into Halo 4, when they were like, oh, we add a reason now why reds and blues fight each other and stuff like that. Get rid of that stuff, nonsense. I think that people should jump the way they should in Halo 2 and Halo 3 and move around the map and so forth. That way, crouch jumping, it can be a lot more easily achieved. There's just a lot of spots in even Warzone that I can't jump to crouch jumping, but clamber, I can get right to it. And that's a problem there too. It's just everything's so much taller. If you also shorten it, so it's easier crouch jump, it's not going to always be clamber favored. That's another thing. I feel like if you can just crouch jump up to it, I would do that. But a lot of times they like raise these walls really high up, so I end up just clambering it instead. And so, again, I like the idea of being able to crouch jump and be able to jump backwards and aim backwards and shoot and so forth. So yeah, and then again, when it comes down to this, there's even not just the casual players and the competitive players. Even the competitive players, it's split. You got competitive players that are super sweaty that love the Halo 5 method, and if you don't like it, that means you're just garbage. And then you have the Halo 3 people that think, oh, we can just go back to the original days and we'll sing Kumbaya and everything will be great again. You can just keep using the same Halo 3 mechanics over and over and over. And it's like, no, even other games that were classics eventually changed their gameplay. They've not always 100% stayed the same, especially when they're multiplayer games. Like when they're talking about sprint, when they're talking about Doom can do just fine without sprint, but then again, I'm like, dude, they upped the speed on it so fast. You can move around the map really fast that it's almost basically like sprinting. But yeah, we need to really reward crouch jumping more by making these changes, and that way clamber is something that still can exist. It's just not something you can just completely just handicap yourself entirely to and get into the map a lot quicker. You can still definitely do it if you're a casual player. You run and jump up and you tap the button at the right time. You can still do it. It won't be like something that's going to drastically have the sweatiness to having to do, but at the same time, it's not going to be something that you're going to want to rely on if you can crouch jump. If it's feeling like it's more rewarding to crouch jump, it actually will be something people want to use. And again, no place that you can that you can't clamber to, or that you can't crouch jump to, that you should not be able to clamber as well. If I can't crouch jump to that spot, you shouldn't be able to clamber it. I know it's easier said than done. I know that the mechanics of clamber is a lot more complex than that on how it actually works. I know it's very simplified, but how to get it to work the way I'm describing probably is not. But I'm just, again, throwing out my idea here of how clamber can actually coexist with crouch jumping. Sorry, I have such a bad grammar sometimes. But yeah, gameplay has, to evolve with the changing market, but at the same time, we shouldn't have to, evolve by completely sacrificing the core mechanics that made the originals great. But again, not having to just completely stick with the original mechanics, we can actually add to it. Anyways, I feel like with this video, we can find some common ground better than probably with the competitive ranking system, which literally, like that one, I love that one because you cannot get either side to agree upon. You have people that love Arena and you have people that love level 1 through 50. If you explain to them that Arena does have 1 through 50, or in fact even more than 1 through 50, in a better way, just symbolized rather than numbers, people just don't understand that. They're like, it's numbers, but it's symbols. It sounds too complicated. Let's just go back to 1 through 50. It's like, even though it actually is designed to try and make it even more skill based than the level 1 through 50, if you can spend hours explaining it. Again, if you don't visually show it, no one's gonna understand it. In fact, a perfect example of this that someone actually showed me in a funny post, which would have been, I thought of it would be a great way to do a mod, is if in Halo Infinite you can mod it so that you can have two teams. One team that has Halo 3 style mechanics of movement, and one team that has Halo 5 style mechanics of movement. I guarantee that if people actually could visually see the difference, they would understand why it's better. So they go, wait, they're moving around the same map at the same speed with their run with my sprint, and yet they can shoot but I can't, and oh, they can jump to different spots and turn around and shoot, whereas I have to clamber. Wait, what the heck? Why is that better? And then they start actually understanding why it's better. But again, if you don't visually understand it, they will never understand it. That's why competitive ranking that one, unfortunately, as much as I try to explain it, people are going to be still sided on both of that. That's probably the hardest one I've ever had to do, is that one. But yeah, it just, you're gonna have either, nope, it's got to completely be removed and punish you for failing to make crouch jumps, and no get out of jail free cards. And you have the other side that says, nope, future is clamber, get used to it, old man. And yeah, the problem is just, unfortunately, it's gonna be just people dead set for or against it, and that it's never gonna change. And you got two types of competitive players now that are split on that, as well as the casual community that's also all vocal about it, and it takes forever to just explain it. That there's no way you can just go around and explain it to all millions of Halo gamers that understand the difference and how it's impacting the gameplay. They're like, well, if you don't like clamber, just don't clamber. If you don't like sprint, don't sprint. They don't understand that there's actually more to it than that. It's not just that it's a choice thing, that it actually affects the gameplay. But yeah, unfortunately, that's just how it is. And unfortunately, I've tried so hard to explain it, and really, it's just unfortunately, you can't win with some of these. Some of these people are just like, either adapt to it and get used to it, or get out of the game. And it's just, unfortunately, I don't know. It's just, unfortunately, there's no way you can really get the elitist and title types to ever understand on either side. But I'm hoping, at least here with this video, that I can explain it in a way that both sides can visually understand how the gameplay works and why it's so bad, but also look at the pros and cons of clamber and jumping, and where we can actually have a common ground that we can all agree upon, and hopefully finds a way that Halo Infinite can still keep clamber without it being a super advantage thing, that even though it will still exist, if someone's taking out your shield, you can't clamber, that it has to be at your waist, you have to be close up to it, and you have to time it just right. You can't just you have to press the A button right as you hit it, or something like that, at least within that point. You can't just be like a distance away and just hit the clamber, or that it's at your head level and you can clamber up. It's like, no, you got to get it at the right kind of height in order to get it, and so forth. And that's just something that is something something a little more difficult. So then that way also the maps are designed to also, again, with the changes of the movement and the map heights and everything, that it should favor crouch jumping again more, and that crouch jumping should take the lead. Anyways, that's my whole take on it. I know this is about a 40-minute video. I know it's a lot to discuss, but hopefully this helps demonstrate a lot of the problems here that we're seeing with Clamber, why it's so controversial, and hopefully maybe there's a way that we can have it coexist without having to completely remove it. And maybe if Aozolai or Favyn see this video, maybe they might have an agreement here, and that there's maybe a way that we can actually get it to continue on. But otherwise, other than that, I don't know what else we can do. Hopefully, though, that this is persuasive enough for both sides to see that there's a way we can find a way to reach a common ground. Anyways, I'm gonna wrap it up here. You guys throw down your comments down below, what your opinions are. I'm very interested to see this, where everyone stands on it, whether you've been convinced or you're still against removing Clamber or keeping Clamber. Go ahead, comment down below. I really want to have a discussion, see what other stuff I may have missed and so forth. So yeah, Favyn and Aozolai, if either one of you two are watching this and have managed to make it through a 40-minute video of this, yeah, please let me know. And yeah, I'm sorry I make these videos so damn long, but it's just unfortunately so controversial. I have to cover every little tidbit, and even then I might not cover everything. But I do appreciate all you guys for watching these, and if you actually enjoy it, again, let me know. Like the video if you did enjoy it, subscribe to it if you want to, or subscribe to my channel if you want to see more controversy videos, and hit those notifications if you want, or share this in your groups if you actually are having discussions about this and you want to explain to people like, hey, why is everyone against Clamber and whatnot, or why is everyone for Clamber and whatnot. Just throw this video in here, and this literally covers everything about why everyone's for and against it for the most part. I mean, there's going to be probably some tiny little tidbits that I missed, and again, that's what the comment sections are for. So if I missed anything, just let me know. I want to conversate that with you and just try and discuss that. I do have other ones that are planned too, so I want to get those out too. But anyways, I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you all, and you all have a great day. Peace.
Wow.